That's a great point, Vincent. And I think especially with the changing times right now as well, right? And in the different industries that you're all in, technology changes really quickly and rapidly. So Andy, I wanted to ask you as well, how do you balance technology and in the business world and keep up and maybe perhaps give some advice to our future leaders on how they can adapt with the changing times?
I think technology is a good tool. It's not for itself. You develop technology to advance, if you like, improve people's livelihood. You know, so I think for me, obviously, we have to be extremely humble. Every youngster is brighter than you are. Things they know you don't. So I think this is a fact. So I think on leadership, I think being a leader doesn't mean that you need to be the fastest, the brightest, you know more than everybody else. Because I think in this world that is not possible. It's unrealistic. You just need to be able to accept other people's idea. I think the point about empathy is I really identified. And secondly, I think a good leader has the ability to unite people. So I think being able to cross bridges, to get everybody to understand each other's viewpoint. In my case, obviously, we have to understand how the machine works. And I think that's one point that I like everyone to really think about is that today's world, it's not just us human beings. I think the presence of machine, things like artificial learning, artificial intelligence, machine learning is really taking shape. It's really around us now. And in the next few years, I don't want to say decades, but I think it's really counting on years that you see that you cannot get away from technology. Either you accept it or not. So I think the question is, how do you be humble enough to not to say that, oh, these technical things I don't know. You just need to, work with people to try to understand, try to learn, because you just can't get away from that.
Yeah, and speaking about learning and keeping up with the times, I also wanted to ask Brian, so you led development changes to your family firm, growing 200 to 600 staff of highly creative architects as well. How do you inspire creativity through that?
I think creativity comes from a conversation. And when you are in that space to talk, you first have to understand, you have to challenge the basic assumptions. I think nowadays, the world is changing so quickly, the way we do things are changing so quickly, the way we work, we shop, it's completely changed upside down. So it's important that when an issue comes up and you want to talk about ideas, you first have to go back to challenging what you assume to be the assumption. And then secondly, I think most important is we don't be afraid to fail. I think if you see failure as learning, as progress, then the more you do it, the quicker you do it, the faster you learn, and then you can create really quite some ingenious solutions through lots of failures. So how do you fail faster, shorter, more rapid, and then you learn quicker? Then I think that's the best way to succeed. So having a heart to accept failure, don't see that as a stigma, but as a way to learn and grow. I think that is important sort of mindset.
And I think when we think about not being afraid of failure, I must ask Esther as well, not because you failed, obviously, but because you've also changed your career a lot. And as a woman in leadership, you went from a banking job at Wall Street to working at Procter & Gamble and then founding your own PR firm and sports company. I must ask, were there any setbacks and how did you persevere through that?
Yeah, back then, after I graduated from Berkeley, everyone was into investment banking, right? So I just kind of blindly followed the trend, went to a couple of interviews in New York and landed an investment banking job. But then, my job was 24/7. I worked from 7 until 11 every day, only number crunching in front of the computer, and I really didn't like my boss. And what's most mind-boggling was I was in this mortgage-backed securities department. I said, how could anyone be ethical enough to package a bunch of delinquent mortgages and sell it to institutional investors, right? So I said, this is it, okay? I'm sick of it, and one day I just took the subway up to Columbia Business School because I wanted to switch career. I sat in a few classes, shook hands with the admissions director, and I said, I really want to switch career. Finance is not my cup of tea. I'm more of a personal, sociable gal, and I want to be in something like more people related. So I studied marketing and management in business school. I was very lucky to land a summer job with Procter & Gamble out here, and they offered me a permanent position. And I was lucky enough to be assigned to SK2, so that was my turning point. I did the entire SK2 marketing, hired Chi to be our spokesperson, and became the regional success model. But I always have this entrepreneurial itch. I said, one day, I really want to become my own boss, right? I'm kind of a control freak. And I also wanted to start my family because I was getting married 2 years after business school. But, like you said, I had failure. I wanted to start my own company. I started Prestige after 5 years with P&G, thinking that having my own company would be a breeze. But then, it was the hardest thing that I've ever done. I lost half of my hair. I was so stressed out. I was all over looking for clients. I was building my team. I even had to buy toilet paper and stationery and everything in the office. So I actually had 3 consecutive miscarriages within 4 years. So failing at the investment banking job wasn't my biggest failure. It's really that 4 years of 3 miscarriages, I said, why me again? I felt like a real failure. But then persistence helped. And now, I'm very happy with 2 girls, 2 teenage girls. My PR company is doing really well. My sports company is doing really well. But I still want to pay tribute to Sir David is that I think, compassion, philanthropy is very important. Somehow, I feel very blessed that I'm where I am here today. And I think giving back is very important. So just to wrap up, my slogan is to be a good leader. One has to inspire, innovate, and integrate with my 3 Ps, which is passion, positivity, and philanthropy.
Thank you so much for sharing that story with us. Speaking about changing careers, I know Vincent has also changed his career from a regional treasurer to some of the most prominent financial institutions in the world to now being an executive coach and consultant. Were there any setbacks you also faced?
Wow, where do you want me to begin? I'm like the poster child for failure, put it this way. So similarly to Esther, I got into banking, but more by accident, by eliminations actually. I was doing poorly in school. I flunked science, I flunked arts. So there's really not much to do other than go into business. So I kind of got into banking because there's not really a choice for me. And that choice became a 30-year career. And I think the flip is really about rediscovering my roots, because I got into banking by accident, nothing more than realizing my own financial aspirations, which is a glorified term for greed. So once I'm done that and rediscovering myself, now that I'm much older and have much less hair than Esther, you're gonna have to teach me how to lose half your hair and still retain that much. So now that this has all happened, I have to ask myself, what's next for me? What am I here to do? So to me, actually, the change might sound like a lot, but it's not really that different. I went from leading teams to enabling leaders to become better leaders. This is just a different perspective as an executive coach. But the setback is tremendous. I'm sure that you know the financial payoff about the financial industry and anything else is quite different. So the way I handle it is really, number one, stop that internal voice to draw back and to change course, because you have to define your purpose. And this is, for once in my life, I get to choose something that I feel is meaningful, so I might as well stick to it. And the finance is something very secondary anyways. And secondly, I guess the point I also want to make is, especially for the younger audience out there, don't be afraid to make mistakes. I mean, as I said, I got into banking by elimination. I don't think there's such thing as taking the wrong path or choosing the wrong field. There's glory in every single field, You just have to stick it up, and if it doesn't work, or at some point in your life, if you discover that there's something else to do, then as a leader, to yourself and to the rest, be ready to change course and be able to admit that it's time to move on.